Hi, I'm David Fetter, Executive Editor Technical to the Prepared Foods Network, and welcome to a Prepared Foods special presentation on trends in ethnic flavors and flavor fusion in new product development. Our guests today are Professor Hinert von Bargen of the Culinary Institute of America, San Antonio, and his wife, Ming Chen von Bargen, who's owner of 3 San Antonio restaurants. So, what better global couple to discuss the current ingredients and trends in global flavors and fusions of the different culinary traditions that can create a whole that is greater and tastier than the sum of its parts? Hi, Ming, Hinner. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, David.
Hey, very nice to meet you.
Thank you for having us. It's always fun.
Now, you and I, Henrik, have talked before about global flavors and fusions, and we know they've been maintaining their upward trend. As we enter 2025, it appears that the flavors and culinary traditions are spreading outward as well, in that more and different traditional cuisine cultures from more countries and regions than ever before are making their way into America's culinary patois. Would you guys agree that it's the case?
Yes, absolutely. I agree.
Oh, yeah, I would agree too. I mean, it's been a long development for many years already. The diners become more and more adventurous and seeking out authentic flavors. Interesting kind of variation on this. So when my wife opened her second location of the same restaurant, how we all of a sudden realized that even within the same town, there was a complete different clientele with different expectations and everything. That was an extremely interesting aspect and a bit of a humbling moment, I have to say. We thought we had it down, all of a sudden, different expectations. But what I enjoy, it really has created a very, very dynamic and evolving landscape. And maybe Ming should talk more about how this actually aligns with our philosophy.
Okay, Ming.
Yeah. Okay. For example, we sell all the signature bao buns. One of them is we call this a sloopy bun, and like um, it's just like a Chinese style cooking and hand pulled pork, and it's aligned beautifully with our philosophy. Did you agree?
Yeah.
And then we also have all kind of noodle dishes and the rice dishes. And the one is I would say is the mala sweet potato noodle bowl or Ming's ban fan. And honor the traditional Asian flavor. And we'll also offer a fresh and a modern take. And those dishes reflect the heart of Asian comfort food and while also catered the global palate and bringing together the authenticity and the innovation,
Mhm. Yeah,
right?
yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
It's also kind of important to understand this trend is not just about taste, it's about cultural connection
yes.
and kind of
Hmm.
that we share the traditional flavors and we like to tell a story and kind of build bridges between communities. We have introduced quite a few new things which were part of well-known cuisines already. Our mala sweet potato noodle soup is a typical Sichuanese flavor, but it wasn't really well known. Many guests, when they read on the menu, a sweet potato noodle soup, and they're wondering, is it like shredded sweet potatoes or what is it? Not understanding that these are actually glass noodles made from sweet potato starch. But our goal is to kind of moving into 2025 and deepen this continuing of to enhance the culinary diversity and appreciation of the all over the world the rich food traditions.
It's that's true, and I wanted to accent the point that you made about having a difference, just going across town, a whole different consumer with different expectations that these consumers have. And, when you start to think of how that must translate from consumers that are just across town to the consumers that are in different cities, in different states, the 50 different states, the whole country. And it makes me curious, Henrik, because as a professor training the next generation of research chefs,
Hmm.
how do you inculcate this recognition, if you will, into them so that they can at once be prepared for the challenge and then meet that challenge of trying to create ethnic, traditional, and even fusions that will appeal across such a broad demographic that is the
Yeah.
U.S. consumer.
Yeah. You're right. It does seem like an unsurmountable challenge. And we have more and more students who actually go into the product manufacturing, research and development field. And they view me that I have a unique perspective because, yeah, as the professor at the Culinary Institute, I'm also an important part of my wife's restaurant. And so I like to tell them just never forget that more than half your ideas go down the drain anyway. The problem is you just don't know which half it is, so you have to keep on innovating. Important, I let them know you have to be out there. You have to be out there. Look at single unit operation, what we like to call mom and pop shops. Hey, what are they coming up with? Hey, how do I see those products moving into multi-chain operations? How do I see those move into even retail and so on, but also take existing ideas and build upon them. And that's where kind of our whole fusion slash cross-cultural aspect comes in. While we do understand not everybody appreciates the fusion, I mean, I know enough Mexican chefs who view Tex-Mex as the bastardization, but it's not. It's a valid cuisine.
It's its own. I mean, I think
Yeah.
there's a certain after 100 years, after 150 years, it becomes your own cuisine. I mean, we
Yes,
have you look at something like Asian cuisine with hot chili peppers. Well, that's a new world ingredient. So,
it
you know,
is.
but
It is.
after several hundred years, I can't imagine, a hot and spicy, say, a Szechuan dish without a hot chili pepper.
Think Thai cuisine, right?
Yeah, Thai cuisine especially.
Yeah.
And well, that's something you and I, Henrik, we talked about in our last video, how the cuisine fusions or traditions that can springboard off of common flavors are what really make it in the world. Because uh taking Thai cuisine as an example, I remember when the first Thai cuisine opened up in Dallas, and first Thai restaurant, and it was an instant hit. But what were the main flavors? You had cilantro, which Texans knew from Mexican cuisine. You had the satay sauce. Satay was just the biggest thing. You don't see it so much in Thai restaurants anymore. I mean, it's there on the menu, but it used to be that that's the thing they sold the most of. But what was it? You have this mixture of this sweet tamarind and peanut sauce. Well, it's peanut butter and jelly. So you've got this
Very
familiar
good point.
flavors in an unfamiliar setting, and that was the bridge that you were talking about a few minutes ago, that you got to have a bridge.
That's
And
exactly it.
yeah, and yeah, it's a challenge, but one that can be met. So that brings up, what are the ethnic and traditional cuisine styles that you guys have noticed that are currently trending, and especially the new regional cuisines that you might have seen entering into the market recently?
Yeah, I would say it's Filipino cuisines. I mean, the Filipino, well, it's all Asian cuisine, and then the Filipino restaurant, Chinese restaurant, Vietnam and Thai, and there's a lot of similarities.
Yeah.
It's we call this like a comfort food from home. You know,
Well, I agree with this, and
yes,
that's especially what Filipino food is good for. It has almost this Pan Asian appeal.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of influenced by all cuisines from East Asia, but also Mexican influence, Spanish influence, like almost like a pan-global cuisine. It is not very well known, so it doesn't have a broad appeal like Chinese cuisine and so on. And yeah, Filipino cuisine with all the buzzwords like pork adobo, pancit or
Mm-hmm.
lumpia, these things are getting more and more known among diners. So, but there's more and more restaurants also showcasing authentic Mexican regional cuisines. We talk about the cuisines of Oaxaca, which is well known, or we talk about northern Mexican cuisines. We talk about the traditional corn tortillas, the heavy meat forward dishes, or we're talking about um, the coastal regions where
Yeah, like a seafood. Yeah.
agua chile is just as well known as ceviche now. So it's pretty pretty clear, pretty good to understand. But it's also not about just variety. It's about celebrating authenticity and paying homage to like regional roots of Mexican cooking.
But yeah, so we've got these new smaller regions where it might be from Mexico or Asia, or as you've pointed out, from areas that haven't taken a firm hold in the US yet, like the Philippines. Would you say, though, that the authenticity suffers in recreating these flavors for batch production and prepared foods products?
There are a very few authentic restaurants where I would say they are really authentic. But for us, it's more like we also have to meet customers' expectations who are familiar with the typical Chinese American restaurant experience. And I remember when we opened our first location and we had guests looking at the menu and walk out because there wasn't anything familiar for them. And you witness this often enough that you have a table of five, and one of them couldn't find anything on the menu because they didn't know what bao buns are or noodle bowls. So we had to take some. I'll put our own spin on, for example, beef and broccoli,
Yeah.
and to have something because the guests just they expect some familiarity, right? So, but it's more like a yeah, an effort to put more authentic flavors in front of the guest, but not to alienate the guest by having just strange things on the menu, right? What do you think?
Yeah,
Ying,
that's what we do. Actually, we really focus on the quality of our like ingredients and then traditions behind all the creations. We recreate the dish, which is familiar to our customer here in San Antonio. It's really important for us to use like ingredients, for example, like a Chinese black vinegar and then um like a Chinese black vinegar, like our star anise, and for fermented black beans into our sauces. Like you still have the authentic flavor, but we transfer this into a new dish. It's more familiar for our customer. For example, we use which is the most dishes on our menu is really translated really really well.
We'll tell you the bulgogi fries.
Yeah, the bulgogi fries. Yes, for example, we use French fry. French fry is really familiar. And then bulgogi, we use like a marinated beef. And then we grill this, and then we grill this with cheese, like a melt cheese. So we put those Korean flavor and the French fries and the melting cheese and with our bulgogi marinade and then put like scallions and spicy mayo and the kimchi on one dish. So
wow.
people say, wow, well, there's a French fry I know, there's a cheese, and there's beef. How can that go wrong? Even though I don't have any knowledge about this bulgogi, but I'm gonna give a try because I love French fry, I love cheese. Here we go.
Yeah.
So we create that dish.
I mean, it's from my perspective, it's important to understand that authenticity isn't an all or not nothing experience. It goes in many directions. And if you put five chefs or culinary experts of one culture together, you get five different opinions about how it's supposed to be done. So for me, it's how to say we try educating the market, expanding on it. But it's the key is to honor the essence of the culinary heritage and not just worry about one specific way how to do it. So it's more like a journey rather than a barrier to entry. So kind of it allows us to grow. It opens up opportunities for even more diverse flavors in the future to not be too stiff about authentic. Yeah.
Smaller vendors,
Bigger
if
vendors, yeah, we had to
yes.
really check on this. But sometimes to the point, uh, we look at ingredients, and case in point, Ming a few months ago opened her Ming's Cafe, which focuses on banh mi sandwiches, sandos, typical Asian style cafe. And for this, we were looking for a Japanese milk bread, for a real nice Japanese milk bread. Impossible to find here. It was just not good to find. So we looked at things like Texas toast. Can we use this? And every time the eating experience just wasn't there for what we expected. So sometimes we have no choice but and to bite the bullet and produce our own. So we prefer not to make these things by ourselves because we just can't produce them as good and as consistent as the supplier would do it. You bring up a very good point, but for us, it's important. We're not the big advocates for everything from scratch. Not at all. Not at all. When there's a good commercial ingredient and I can produce it as good or at a reasonable price, I will buy the commercial ingredient. So what we like to do, we consider there are certain ingredients have a greater impact on the dish than the others. For example, all our sauces, we make them by ourselves because they have a great impact. Call it ginger dressing, call it the curry barbecue dressing. Ming mentioned the cilantro lime dressing, and so on. And so these are the high impact ingredients where we really make it from scratch because you can't find those anywhere else. I understand but for a larger company like a multi-unit operation, they can develop a gold standard and then they should have the resources to kind of outsource it to a manufacturer or to a third party.
Okay. Um, it's an interesting way. You could get to a point where you need a key ingredient that you just simply cannot get.
Yeah.
And that's where you just have to totally reformulate.
Yes.
But
It's hard sometimes.
yeah. Well, I've seen CPG companies that have manufactured a particular product and then hit the brick wall. I know of one company, a good mid-sized company, that simply had to close down because no matter how good the product was, and it was an outstanding product, they reached a point where it couldn't be co-manufactured to their satisfaction, couldn't always get the steady flow of ingredients they needed to keep that going, and they just gave up. And it's sad to see that going, see a company like that go under, but it brings up a very good point. Sometimes you just can't continue if you don't have the ingredients.
Yes. I do feel blessed with the availability of many ingredients. Most things are just a phone call away.
What culinary traditions do you feel are being ignored or underrepresented in the U.S. that shouldn't be? And if so, why are they being ignored?
Do you want to take that?
We can both take that.
All right. I want to.
Yeah, you go ahead.
I go ahead. So, I mean, it's so obvious and it's so clear, but it's just not being seen is U.S. indigenous cuisine.
Ah,
It's nowhere represented. You might find it if you go to families within it, yeah, within that communities. But if you think about how deeply these are tied to the history and the land of this country, you don't find a Navajo restaurant anywhere. Sioux restaurant, if you read it. So, and I don't know why that is. That in generally underrepresented, the resources just aren't there, and it's if you think about how deeply this country is rooted in those practices, the ingredients, you really don't find it much. So within the community, yes, but not on mainstream culinary art. It's also important to understand we Native American cuisine for sure is not a monolith. It is,
Yeah,
I mean, a variety of different cuisines. I cannot, for sure, the tribes in northern Minnesota had a vastly different cuisine than tribes in Arizona.
exactly. Not a lot of reindeer in Arizona.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
So
kind of, so
that's a
I feel they're definitely underrepresented. Something what we are working on also at the CA, the cuisines of sub-Saharan Africa. Ethiopian cuisine is getting a foothold, that's for sure. But if you see more and more online about West African food, talk like fufu is getting more and more known, right? So, but it's all more like on TikTok you find some cool things, but I wouldn't know about any good restaurant where I could go with a couple of friends and have a bowl of fufu and a flowerman stew or something like this from Nigeria or from Liberia.
yeah,
So,
that's a good point, and they are underrepresented. I know that North African has its waves of popularity,
oh yes,
comes and goes. But yeah, Central and West Africa, very underrepresented. And I think these are good opportunities for research chefs to delve into some of these cuisines and think in terms of
yeah.
blowing them out into products that can resonate with the
Yeah.
rest of.
What I mentioned at the CAA, we acknowledged this a while ago, and we are working on a semester away program. Where we have quite a few of the semester away program in Singapore for Asian cuisines. In Spain, we have several locations. In Italy, we have several partners. We're now working on something where students will spend one semester in Tanzania.
Oh, wow. Now, see, that ought to make some changes. This is great. We're out of time, and I always hate running out of time with you guys because it's just always a thrill. We are definitely going to have you back.
Oh, I would look forward to that.
Separately, Henrik Ming. We'll have you back. Thank you for today for sharing your exceptional knowledge and insight for global flavors and fusions. I know I mean, we just scratched the surface. So I want to thank our audience members for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this informed and informal view of global cuisine issues. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I'm David Fetter, Executive Editor Technical for Prepared Foods Media. This was a talk with Professor Henrik van Bargen of the Culinary Institute of America and restaurateur Ming Xian van Bargen. And hey, be sure to check out our media menu at preparedfoods.com. You're going to find an abundance of articles, videos, podcasts on global flavors and flavor fusions, some by Henrik, some by other contributors, and many more resources of value for today's food and beverage product developers and makers. So until next time.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
us.
It's been fun. Looking
Yeah.
forward.